The brain is absolutely ridiculous and one of the least understood aspects of the natural kingdom. We don't even understand how the brain of a worm works, so how on earth are we meant to comprehend our own complex grey matter? Psychology has been officially studied for 130 years and we're still making huge discoveries year on year. My mum's a psychologist, so I grew up hearing about all of this stuff and really took for granted some of the things I learned. So like any responsible millennial, I decided to start a podcast about it and share the sweet, sweet gift of therapy. I'm sat on the couch with my mum, Sandy. She's a psychologist with over 20 years of experience studying and treating clients. Hi, Mum.
Hi.
We're going to release a new episode each week talking about a different aspect of mental health and therapy, and hopefully some of you will find it useful. All of our episodes are filmed and put up on YouTube if you want to watch us actually sit on our sofas in the living room next to the fire. It's nice and warm. I don't know if you did put a new log on, you know.
Yeah, but it's nearly gone now.
All right, we'll put another one in a minute. The link is going to be in our Instagram bio at OnTheSofaPod, or you can catch us on YouTube too. Give us a follow, rate us 5 stars on iTunes, tell your friends about us. We really want to reach a load of people with this and try and help folk out. Anyway, this month we're talking about why am I like I am? Mm-hmm. And we started with like why childhood makes you who you are, and then last week we talked about friends and peer attachments at work and through school.
Or relationships in general.
Yeah, and now we're going to talk about romantic relationships.
Really interesting subject.
Yeah, something that a lot of people really focus a lot of their self-worth on, I think, and their life goal is to get married or whatever.
Yeah. So a lot of research states that we've talked about early childhood, the attachments that you have in your early attachments with your early caregivers determines the type of person that you're going to end up with. But a lot of people, including me, disagree with that. Yeah,
because that's what I thought. That's what I assumed was the case.
I think that can happen.
Okay. So
I'll sort of talk about that. But so an example of that happening could be a female, perhaps with an abusive father, then goes into abusive relationships and says to me, why do I keep finding these abusive partners? Why is it me? And then we talk about the history of her childhood and what's happened unconsciously, psychodynamically.
If you go back to last month, I think we talked about psychodynamic methodologies.
Excuse me. Unconsciously, this is a model of a relationship that she understands.
Right.
Unconsciously, she knows how to operate within that relationship because she grew up in it.
So although she doesn't like it, obviously no one's going to enjoy that situation.
No.
They understand it and it's comfortable to understand it.
It's almost like a default position. If we talk about pathways. So it's kind of like that. But that's not all the time. Attachment styles can change. So there's 4 in total, and you can find out what type of attachment style you are free on Google.
Google it, yeah.
Have you done it?
Read them and I'll tell you if I have.
So there's secure attachment, then there's anxious, preoccupied, together, dismissing, avoidant, fearful, avoidant, disorganised.
I think I'm the third one. Fearful, what was that?
The third one, dismissing, avoidant.
I think I'm that from memory, but maybe when you go into it a bit I'll tell you.
Okay. So I don't agree with that 100% because your attachments can change. The style of your attachment can change. It can change as you get older.
What are those 4 attachment styles? Can you just say what they are, like briefly, each one?
So a secure attachment by early theorists would indicate that the child had very close bonds with their early attachments and that they will look for a relationship that where the bonds are really trusting and close, that they will seek that type of attachment out. And I don't disagree with that either.
Right.
And
so that might include like a lot of physicality if the parents are really physical with a baby, and a lot of might love back scratches from their partner because their parents used to do that to them, things like that.
Yeah, And the big thing is the trust.
Trust, right? Okay. They want someone that they can really confide in.
Quite implicit
Right.
trust. So, and I mean, not only in romantic relationships, but you can get a feel for this in really good friendships, can't you?
Mm-hmm.
But sticking to romantic relationships, so that person may unconsciously move forward into their romantic relationship with that neurological template in place.
Got you.
I mean, that's an ideal world, isn't it? But
Someone who's secure and trusting, and
but sometimes that's early secure attachment, as we've said before, can change or can be dislodged
by peer attachments or by other trauma in life, for sure, later in life.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the secure attachment.
Anxious, preoccupied. I mean, they all speak volumes. This person
At the what was it? Anxious,
preoccupied. So they might be preoccupied by looking at, always observing what's going on externally, and not noticing themselves, because their caregivers might have been quite demanding, anxious and demanding, and that makes the child anxious, and a defence mechanism for that excuse me, would be to keep an eye on your environment.
Sure.
What's her mood like? What's the adult's mood like, sort of thing.
Right.
And so for them, if we were looking at unconscious mechanisms operating in a romantic relationship, they're going to be a bit of a people pleaser. They're going to be looking for a person that they can please.
They can make them happy.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. While
these are my interpretations.
Of course.
I'm not sort of going by anyone else's science here.
Yeah, and that could, while ignoring their own maybe issues or their own happiness, which could cause resentment towards that person long term, because they're like, well, I'm not happy, but I'm doing all this stuff for you. And they're like, well, I don't want you to do anything for me.
Yeah, I didn't ask for that.
Yeah. Okay. Got you. So that's an anxious avoidant person.
So, in my opinion.
Okay. And the next one?
So the next one is dismissing avoidant. So this is like a parent that really, really couldn't give a monkey's for the child, has no emotional bond. It's the parent that's important, and they avoid contact with that child. They're just not really that interested for whatever reason.
Right. So how would that affect?
That might be because of their parents.
Absolutely. How would that affect a
quite
romantic
badly
relationship? What would that look like?
Potentially quite badly, because they might be very needy. They could go in any direction here. They might be quite narcissistic, maybe. It's all about them. Because
they had to be as a kid, because they weren't getting that from elsewhere.
Yeah.
Right.
Might be.
Yeah, of course. Talking generalities.
It's very
loosey goosey science.
Yeah, and I know that it is science, and they say these 4 things, and there is a lot to back it up. But I think they change.
I think, there's a lot of these things. There's like the Enneagram test as well, which is a personality test, and you've got the Myers-Briggs test and a bunch of others, and they're good to kind of give you an idea, a flavour of what your personality might be like. But you can't put everyone ever existing into 7 boxes on the Enneagram, 8 boxes, sorry, or 4 boxes on the relationship, this relationship, right? Like, it just doesn't. There's grey area. It doesn't
feel right, does it?
Yeah, it's generalities. So, sorry, that was anxious, dismissive. So that person might be quite insecure, might need a lot of reassurance, could be quite narcissistic.
Might even be needy.
Right, okay. And then what was the final one?
So fearful avoidant, ACCA disorganised. That's probably the worst, isn't it? Because...
Fearful.
Yeah, that's like the little boy I was talking about in another podcast, Miles,
Yeah.
on the advert.
He was crying silently, crying in the cot.
He's living in amber,
Right.
in fight-flight mode, and he's dismissed. He's nothing. So there's interesting stories, real stories about children that have grown up in those environments, and what research looks at is, depending on the rest of the child's life, they can grow up to become completely lost in their world. So they might go down the drugs route because they're so cut off anyway. Or alternatively, they might hit gold in a sense and go in another direction where they become really successful. That can happen.
Like obsessive about
but they'll still be really cut off.
And what would someone like this look like in a relationship? Someone who had a really tough time as a kid and they were the fearful, dismissive, was it?
Yeah, so they would, the fearful avoidant, they might, so if they met somebody, it might be somebody like them in the drug world.
Okay, right, okay.
Because, that's safer, isn't it?
Sure.
And if it's somebody who I talked about who went in the opposite direction and was a high flyer, they'd possibly be looking for a mum.
Okay, so the difference between the dismissive child in relationships later in life, the dismissive child wasn't necessarily like abused or like really badly neglected. Number 3, they weren't neglected, they were just unimportant to their parents, very general again, potentially, and that would make them maybe crave more like self-love, like they need reassurance all the time, whereas the 4th type, the fearful type, is really looking for a parental replacement. They're looking for somebody who can father them, mother them, really give them that caregiving.
Yeah, possibly.
Generality.
It's because there's so many other things at play here, aren't there? I don't know how you can kind of imprint that history and say that's how it's going to be
forever
when you're an adult.
Yeah, definitely. Why do you think romantic relationships are so important to people?
Well,
opposed to like friendships, because obviously friendships are important too, but why do people sort of crave the relationships?
Because it feels safer for two. I was looking at an article the other day where again, I can't remember the whole content, I just remember it was about people in relationships, and if pain was inflicted on one and they were holding hands with their partner, it didn't hurt as much than if they were alone. Really? So there's something again about the sensory stuff. This is a very recent piece of research. So not only is it about for couples, why, in terms of your question, I think there are so many benefits that we don't even think about. So even if you're thinking about the biological side, you've got so many reward centres being fulfilled with so many good biochemicals like oxytocin, because of companionship and trust and honesty and activities that you're doing with one person that is reliably giving you those results. Yeah. Do you think that romance is important, or is, because I think some people are in relationships for maybe comfort or security or other reasons, and there isn't that romantic thing there. Is that still really beneficial? Or definitely, I'm not saying that came out really bad, but I'm more saying, like, is romance really that important? I think any element that adds to maintaining a relationship is important. It's like I say to people in couple counselling, a lot of them have got their own companies, so I'll not liken it to that, but I'll say, would you take your finger off the pulse where your company's concerned? No. Well, why not? Well, because things will start to happen in the wrong direction. And then I'll say, well, in your marriage, do you think you've taken your finger off the pulse? Well, what do you mean? We go to work, we have our meal and da-da-da. But what don't you do now that you might have done at the beginning of that relationship? What sorts of things did you do back then? And when they start, you can see their bodies changing just at the thought of the question. And you can see them thinking, what did we do differently? So they'd make surprises up. They'd really think about a nice present, and it wouldn't have had to cost anything. It could be really so thoughtful, and all those lovely things that you do at the beginning of a relationship. I know you can't emulate that for 40, 50 years perhaps. Well, some people can, but you've taken your finger off the pulse if you've fallen in with 9 to 5.
Well, it's complacency after a while, I assume,
I think it easily happens, and I don't think there's enough education on how to keep a romantic relationship going.
Do you think that we're meant to have one partner indefinitely?
Oh, that's very cultural.
Do you think it's beneficial to have one partner indefinitely?
It depends if it's the right one.
Okay, that's
doesn't
fair.
it?
That's completely fair.
Really.
What do you think are some key things to like maintaining a healthy relationship with somebody? If you've just got into a relationship, or if you've been together for 10 years or whatever, it doesn't really matter.
To maintain?
Yeah, to make sure you have a healthy relationship with somebody.
Communication is like key.
How do you communicate in a healthy way? Because I think some couples argue a lot, and they're like, well, that works for us. Like, we like having an argument, and then afterwards we're all fine again. And maybe that's fine for them, but what would you say is like a healthy way to communicate issues and to...
I know this sounds a bit odd, but and you don't need to do this in every situation, but for some people I do recommend once a month catch up. Not in the house.
Not in the house?
No. Not in the house.
I actually read about this recently, but carry on.
Oh, did you? I normally say if you can get out for a walk, all the better, because that's great. Or go to a location socially, but do it regularly, and say, you might have collated a few things that were annoying and you want them to get better. So you're not saying it for a derogatory reason. You're saying, this kind of upset me, and I'm sure you didn't mean it like that, but I really want to talk about it, and I want to see if we can together change your reaction to these situations. So doing it in a nice, healthy way. Yeah,
I was speaking to a friend of mine. I said I read about it because we write to each other, and they said that they have a fiance, they're getting married in a year or whatever, and they said that every month they have almost a team meeting, which sounds really lame.
No.
But it's where they raise any issue, and because it's regular, it takes all the weight out of the complaints, and it can be anything. It can be like tiny things, like you just leave your socks on the floor every day and I have to pick them up. Like, that is really getting to me, and it doesn't matter, like, it's such a nothing, but over a year that would start to bother you, and then you'd start looking for other things. So it gives them an opportunity every week just to voice these frustrations, and sometimes even just voicing them is going to
help
take the weight out of them a lot.
Yeah, because they will add up.
Yeah.
And they're so minuscule, some of them, aren't they, that you think, well, what's the point in that? But yeah, I think communication, contact, surprises, which again don't have to cost anything. So
just
date nights should be, if it's possible, a lot of people have got young children, but once a month, once a fortnight, once a week, whatever you can do. One of you devise a plan and don't tell the other, and then the following week the other one devises a plan. That means your head is orientated within the relationship, just as it would be in a business. You don't you have to keep your head in the business for it to improve.
Definitely.
So what else?
One nugget of wisdom that I'd like to share. I always ask elderly people in my life 2 questions. The first one is, what would you tell 18-year-old or 20-year-old you? I've had some really excellent answers to that, but that's not so relevant now. And one of them is people who've been married a long time. I'm like, well, what is the secret to being married for however long? So like my grandma and grandpa have been married for 70 years, maybe 60, 70 years. And I asked grandpa, I was like, how on earth do you sustain something for that? Because I think they're still pretty happily married. They seem fine, you know, they're going strong. And he said, I've never ever let the sun set on an argument. Which I really like. So before you go to bed, doesn't matter what's happened that day or what the issue is, before you go to sleep, you need to make sure that you're both on the same page. Doesn't matter if you disagree or it isn't completely resolved, because that isn't always possible, but that you both know that you're going to try and fix whatever the argument is, and that you go to bed knowing you're on the same team and you're not fighting each other. And that's another thing as well. If you come across issues, you've got to attack the issue and not attack each other, and that's really hard to do sometimes.
Yeah, and that's a very good point. That is, because a lot of couples that come into clinic, this is another tip, they're talking over each other, shouting over each other, not listening to each other. And one day I had to ask them to leave. And I gave them their money back because I can't do my job, and they just would not stop shouting at each other. So on the back of that, when I talk about communication, stop talking over each other. It happens so much. I mean, you two, I like to think I taught you quite well in that area, because you both don't do it.
Max is here as well, by the way.
Yeah, sorry.
Not an invisible man.
So if we do it to each other, we say, oh, sorry, we back off.
Yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, I hate people interrupt me all the time. I hate being interrupted.
But we used to have a saying for that. Do you remember it?
No.
Sorry for talking while you interrupt me.
Yeah, you did used to say that all the time.
And that's how I taught. Yeah. I would gently teach you. Now, some people...
Yeah.
I've taught that to. They sometimes forget it, so I have to reinforce it. Yeah.
But listen. Actually listen to what's being said.
And let your partner or whoever finish the conversation.
Yeah. And talking about attacking a problem and not the other person, it's rare that somebody is out at you. They don't usually mean to critique personal things. They're not having a go at you because they love you, because they're in a relationship with you. So there's a problem somewhere, and you need to try and learn to not take whatever they're saying to heart. They're not trying to hurt you, but they are hurting because of something. And you've got to listen to what they're saying and work out what the actual problem is, you know? Like, oh, you work too hard. It's like, that feels like an attack. Like, oh, but I'm working hard to try and fund our life. And actually what the problem is that you're not making time for me. And you need to not take it personally, be like, okay, so that feels hurtful that I'm trying to work hard for us. Great, but what is the problem? The problem is I'm not giving you enough attention, and that's where we're actually having the issue.
Yeah, there's quite a lot to think about, isn't there? But a lot of people don't think about it, for sure. And a lot of people they think, oh, when I get married it's going to be great, and this super fairy tale. And it can't be that without the work. It's a for want of a better word, it's a job.
My girlfriend hates when I say I've got a new responsibility now. She's like, oh, I'm your responsibility, am I? But it really is, isn't it? You really do have to think of it as a job. A job, yeah, and it's not an unpleasant job, but you do have to think.
Yeah,
I have a responsibility to commit time to this.
Yeah, it's semantics, really. It's just a word, but people don't.
I think that's a great place. Please do.
Please do think.
Please do think about it and put some time in.
Oh, can I just add one more thing?
Sure.
Comedy.
Oh.
Throughout the whole... I haven't even mentioned comedy throughout the whole of these podcasts, but it has such a how do you say?
Medicinal.
Medicinal, sorry. Impact on your health. That needs to be built in, not only to the relationship, but built into your life,
That you laugh and enjoy things.
Yeah, so even, I mean, we have so much television opportunities now. You can just put comedy in, and you should be doing that once or twice a week, you know? I mean, what's that film I saw years ago? I Am Pretty, I think it was called. And I remember my partner didn't want to go and see it. He wanted to see the war film next door. And I was like, look, you go and see the war film because I don't want that. And I'm going to see this comedy. And in the end, he came with me. And he said that was an absolutely amazing film. Funny. It's funnier in the beginning than it is at the end. But it was still funny. And it was, that just lifts you so much.
Yeah, no, completely agree. Laugh. Live, laugh, love.
Yeah.
How's that to finish? Live, laugh, love. Thank you very much for watching this week's podcast. Next week, we're going to finish off Why Am I Like I Am month with big life milestones, bereavement, big topics like that. Again, if you're not following us on Instagram, we're at On The Sofa Pod. We're on YouTube. We're going to be doing a little YouTube series where Mum watches BoJack Horseman about depression and relationships with your parents and stuff and reacts to those episodes. That's going to be really fun. So make sure you guys subscribe to us there. And we'll see you next Monday. See you there.